Hey guys, what's shaking? So listen, Parkinson's disease typically does not start with a physical symptom. It starts long before that, long before you ever see anything or feel anything. But sadly, it's become the fastest growing neurological disease in the world. And I know this because I have it, as well as millions of others. But I also know that I'm not going to be a statistic to this disease. I'm not going to sit idle. I'm not going to sit quiet. I'm on a quest. I'm on a quest to find answers. I'm on a quest to find hope. I'm on a quest to find a cure. So that's why today I'm going to be traveling from my house in New Jersey through the tunnel. We're going to go into New York City and we're going to sit down with one of the leading voices in this field, Dr. Ray Dorsey. I could sit here all day listing his accomplishments. Neurologist, researcher, advocate, New York Times bestseller, winner of the Champion of Change Award by the White House, raised over $60 million in grant funding for Parkinson's. But what I think I admire the most is that Dr. Dorsey is willing to say some of the things that most people aren't. That this might not be genetics, and it could be a man-made disease. Starts in the nose, in the gut, through the air, water, soil, contaminants that we live in every single day, which quite frankly make it more of a public health failure than a medical issue. But today we're going to have an honest talk about what it means to have Parkinson's, about what needs to be done to prevent you from getting Parkinson's, and quite frankly, what could slow the progression that me and millions of others have. This is about helping future generations. So this conversation, it's not just going to be about science. It's going to be about accountability. It's going to be about quality of life. It's going to be about giving people something with Parkinson's that they need more than anything, and that's hope. So I give you my conversation with Dr. Ray Dorsey. Hey everybody, how are we doing? We are here today with one of the leading voices in the Parkinson's world, a gentleman that I have met and has helped me greatly. I consider him a friend, I consider him family. Dr. Ray Dorsey, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much. Tim Lockard, you're one of the leading voices in the Parkinson's community.
Well, I don't know about that, but what I want to do certainly is, I think you and I have spoken before, and we've talked about the importance of advocacy and how things start at the bottom level. People's voices need to be heard. But I also think that for somebody like myself, when I was first diagnosed, I didn't quite know what Parkinson's was. I didn't know how I got it. I didn't know how I could fight it. So I'd like to bring things down to like a Parkinson's 101 level, and let's talk about the people that just don't have great information about where this comes from. Now, we believe here that only 12% is genetic, which would lead you to believe that this is possibly a man-made disease through contaminants in the air, water, soil. You know, we hear words like paraquat, TCE. I'll let you call it the right thing. What is it called? Maybe you could tell people a little bit about where Parkinson's comes from and some of the studies that went into that.
So, really delighted to be with you. So, Parkinson's was first major description was Dr. James Parkinson, who saw something new on the streets of London in 1817. And he saw 6 people, older men over age 50, all likely men, with something that he said had not been characterized in medical literature. The disease was not in the textbooks. And he saw people with tremor, a stooped posture, and a shuffling gait. And he described them, and he didn't know what caused the disease. 200 years later, it's estimated that 6 million people have the disease. So you go from something not described in the medical literature, catching the eye of a 61-year-old physician on the streets of London amidst the London fog, to the world's fastest growing brain disease in just 200 years. Well, what causes that? Well, we know that our genes don't change that much. And as you mentioned, there's been a great study led by the Parkinson's Foundation called PD Generation. It's open to anyone who has Parkinson's disease. It offers free genetic counseling and free genetic testing. And in 2024, they published the results of the first 8,000 individuals that they did genetic testing on. Of that 8,000, 13% carry a genetic cause or genetic risk factor for the disease. Some of your listeners know about LARC2, the most common genetic cause of the disease. About 2 to 3% of people with Parkinson's. Most common genetic risk factor or mutation in a gene called GBA, about 8%. That said another way, 87% of Americans, the vast majority of Americans with Parkinson's, do not carry any known genetic cause or risk factor for the disease. The principal causes of Parkinson's, likely for you and likely for most of your listeners, do not lie within us. They are not in our cells. They're not in our DNA. They are not in our genes. They are outside of us in our environment. So what are these environmental risk factors that are causing people like you and many others, Ali Signorelli, to develop Parkinson's at such a young age? in addition to older individuals getting the disease. I think it's chemicals in our food, as we described in chapter 1 of our book, like certain pesticides, chemicals in our water, like this dry cleaning chemical or degreasing chemical, trichloroethylene, TCE, 2 carbons in black, 1 hydrogen in white, and 3 chlorines in blue, hence its name trichloroethylene. It's got a dry cleaning cousin, 1 more chlorine atom called perchloroethylene, associated with about a 500% increased risk of Parkinson's. It's the same chemicals that contaminate the marine-based Camp Lejeune, where Marines, when they were young, they were 20, some were teenagers, were exposed to this in their drinking water, and 34 years later had a 70% increased risk of developing Parkinson's disease. This chemical and the other one can also evaporate from underlying contaminated groundwater or soil, and like radon, enter people's homes, schools, workplaces, completely undetected. People can be breathing it in. And then outdoor air pollution, which may have been causing the cause for the first individuals that Dr. Parkinson described. When he was describing the condition in 1800 London, you couldn't see across the street, air quality was so bad. 1800 London air quality is the same as what's in Delhi, India today.
Now, also talk about golf courses, because I know we've discussed golf courses. I have children that play golf, soccer, so obviously in schools, pesticides are used with a lot of these grounds. We've done studies about downwind, upwind, how close you live to them, what's in the soil. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes, so Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring in 1962 because she was worried about the indiscriminate use of pesticides like DDT. She recognized that pesticides have benefits, right? And during World War II, DDT saved millions of people from getting malaria. The guy who created DDT won a Nobel Prize. Wow. But she was worried that we would use it indiscriminately without thinking about it. And so what are some good examples of where we're not thinking about it? We routinely spray pesticides on kids' schools and playgrounds. We spray pesticides on sports fields. There are 3 studies, one in Italy, one in Spain, one in Scotland, that have found that soccer players in those nations have a higher risk of developing ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, also tied to pesticides. You mentioned golf courses. My colleague, Dr. Brittany Krzyzanowski, and her colleague, Dr. Rodolfo Savica, a neurologist at the Mayo Clinic, showed last year that individuals who live within a mile of a golf course in Rochester, Minnesota, where the Mayo Clinic is located, have a 126% increased risk of Parkinson's disease. Golf courses use about 5 times as much pesticides per acre as do farms. And 2 of the pesticides that are widely sprayed on golf courses, one's called a pesticide called chlorpyrifos, sprayed on apple orchards. It's estimated to cost 26 million kids 17 million IQ points. We're making our kids less bright by using neurotoxins. Another pesticide widely sprayed on golf courses even today is a pesticide called 2,4-D, which some of your listeners will realize is a component of Agent Orange, which we know is linked to Parkinson's and is responsible likely for a lot of veterans from the Vietnam War for developing Parkinson's disease.
I mean, you're not, unless I'm wrong, you're not going to find a cure for a disease unless you know what caused that disease, is that right?
Yeah, so you've been reading well. So I can't think of a single disease that we can cure medically, like with like a pill, which is I think what most people with Parkinson's want, kind of take something and cure it. We can do that for hepatitis C. When we figured out what caused hepatitis C, we have a pill that you can take and you can cure yourself of hepatitis C. I can't think of a condition that we can cure medically where we don't first know its cause. So if we identify the causes, if we do the research to identify these causes, and I think in large part that research has already been done, we can accelerate our development of new therapies by studying the effects of these chemicals in the lab, in laboratory animals, and screen therapeutic compounds against it.
But I mean, you bring up hepatitis C. Hepatitis C was Parkinson's at one point. It was something that nobody thought there would be a cure for, that there is. So, like, if all the contaminants in the air, the water, and the food are really what's causing this, why is it, I mean, we've been to Washington together, we've advocated together, why is it so hard to ban these, paraquat, I mean?
That's a good question for the EPA, and if we ask the EPA why they're allowing a weed killer that over 70 countries, including China, have banned, why are they allowing it to be sprayed in New Jersey? Why are they allowing it to be sprayed on vineyards in New York? Dr. Tanner, Caroline Tanner, my colleague at UCSF, showed over 10 years ago that farmers who use the weed killer have a 150% increased risk of disease. Drs. Beata and Kimberly Paul at UCLA showed that simply living or working near where paraquat is sprayed is associated with a doubling of your risk of Parkinson's. You know, in smoking, some people say, well, if someone wants to smoke a cigarette, that's their business. But we found out that smoking a cigarette isn't just that person's business. If I'm smoking a cigarette, it's your business too, because you get secondhand smoke and you're at increased risk for getting lung cancer. Right. Well, it turns out that secondhand exposure to paraquat is this associated risk of Parkinson's disease. We should eliminate the secondhand exposure, and quite frankly, we should eliminate the firsthand exposure, so we stop sowing the seeds of Parkinson's disease, so future generations like your 3 boys do not bear the burden of this terrible disease.
So let's talk a little bit about this unbelievable book, The Parkinson's Plan, A New Path to Prevention and Treatment. Took over 2 years to write with your colleague, Dr. Michael Loken. Just traveled the country doing a book tour on it. The first couple of chapters go into depth about the research that was done as far as what you're just talking about. What I really loved was the Parkinson's 25, which are 25 tips to help everyday life to hopefully not get Parkinson's, or even if you have it, to slow progression. And there are some cool things in there, like you drink coffee, you drink wine.
Organic wine.
We certainly don't have time for you to go into all 25, but what are some of the other things, like briefly, like everyday person can do as far as washing their chemicals and foods?
Yeah, so I like to read books, but I realize that most people don't. So Michael and I, on page 237, you can skip ahead, page 237 is the Parkinson's 25, and we give you 25 recommendations to possibly slow your rate of progression if you have the disease, and to prevent yourself from ever getting it if you don't have it. And there's lots of pictures, so you can enjoy them. So the first one is to wash your produce, even your organic ones. Pesticides have contaminated our food supply. Remnants of pesticides are found in 20% of all common foods. Organic produce, dairy products, and meat can reduce exposure, but can still have unsafe residues of pesticides. So wash your produce at least with water, and consider simple vegetable washes, vinegar or salt solutions too. And then we give you lots of other ones, talking about your diet, managing your diabetes, you can have your cup of caffeinated coffee, check your well. If you get your water from a well, you're putting a carbon filter on your faucet today. If you get your water from a well on your own property, you're putting a carbon filter on your faucet today, because wells in rural areas tend to be contaminated by pesticides from nearby farms, and in urban and suburban areas can be contaminated by that degreasing chemical. And we talk about using an air purifier, not poisoning yourself. You are not spraying, you're listening to Rachel Carson, you're not indiscriminately using pesticides in your home and in your yard, and you're dry cleaning cautiously.
So it's basically about cleaner living. Even regardless, the everyday person should be doing such a thing, but obviously somebody who doesn't want to develop Parkinson's or any kind of neurological diseases or help with the progression of Parkinson's if they have it.
Yeah, it's clean living, but when I was in medical school, my wife said we should buy organic produce, and I poo-pooed the idea.
Not anymore.
Yeah, because I used to think that the food we eat, the water we drink, and the air we breathe were safe or clean. That's what I thought, right. And I think I was wrong. And so
real quick, not to cut you off, I just want to say for everybody who's listening, every man who's listening, his wife was right.
Yes, it's Valentine's Day coming up. It's a good point to emphasize. I don't think that our food, water, and air are clean or safe, and that's why we give you these 25 actions that you as an individual can take. Most of them are free. Many are inexpensive.
Very simple.
Only a few are, the most expensive one's an air purifier. So we're doing that, but that's because we failed to protect ourselves. What greater example of failing to protect ourselves than that we spray pesticides on kids' schools and playgrounds, and we have the audacity to ask why 1 in 31 8-year-olds have autism or intellectual disability.
Which almost kind of takes it from a health issue to almost a environmental or lack of caring about our environment issue, no?
Yeah, the health you have is a reflection of your environment in the past. The health you have today, the health you enjoy today or don't enjoy today, is a reflection of your environment in the past. If we create healthy environments, we create healthy people, and we reduce the burden of disease, and we save money.
Yeah.
You know, in the United States, 1 out of every $5 of the economy is spent on sick care. 20% of expenditures, GDP, is spent on sick care. What greater indictment that we are not creating a safe and healthy environment than we're spending 1 out of every $5 on sick care, and that care isn't even accessible. We clearly do not have the right approach to this. We're seeing the rise of chronic diseases. We're seeing the rise of cancer of the colon in people under 50. We're seeing Parkinson's rise. We're seeing autism rise. We're seeing ALS rise. We're seeing brain cancer rise. We see 1 in 3 85-year-olds getting with Alzheimer's disease. All of this is unnatural. This is unnatural.
Sure.
You put a mouse in the lab and you let it age, it will never spontaneously develop Parkinson's disease, or for that matter, Alzheimer's disease.
In a controlled environment.
In a controlled environment. Only if you manipulate its genes or expose it to toxic chemicals, or in some cases both, will you get.
Which is what's happening to us.
And what we're getting right now.
So, one of the things that was a huge deal a couple of years ago, and you and I, again, were in Washington and we were speaking about this, the National Parkinson's Plan. For those who just recently have been diagnosed or dabbling into the Parkinson's world, what was the intent of that? What was it supposed to do? And in your opinion, why the holdup? Why the lack of progress?
Hat tip to Ted Thompson, the Michael J. Fox Foundation. They realized that Parkinson's is the world's fastest growing brain disease, affects 1.2 million Americans. The economic cost to U.S. alone is $50 billion, half to Medicare. And they said, we don't have a federal plan to prevent the disease, to slow it, to treat it, and to cure it. And so they created, with some outstanding members of Congress, including Congressman Gus Bilirakis, Republican from Florida, Congressman Paul Tonko, just upstate from where we're sitting right now, Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton, who has progressive supranuclear palsy,
Yes.
A bill that requires the federal government to create a federal plan to address Parkinson's disease. That bill passed the U.S. House of Representatives 407-9 and unanimously passed the Senate, signed into law by President Biden. It calls for the formation of an advisory council. To my knowledge, that advisory council has yet to be formally formed or
Well, we're hearing little drips and drabs that some people are getting letters, so we're hoping there's a little progress on it, but I agree, at this point, it's long overdue.
And these delays have costs.
Costing lives.
Yes, so today 250 people were diagnosed with the disease and 100 Americans died with Parkinson's disease. We need to have a sense of urgency about what we're doing. We're sitting here in New York City, not too far from where we're sitting. In 1987, activists formed an organization called ACT UP, and their motto was silence equals death, because in the 1980s, silence equals death for people with HIV. The people who survived with HIV were those who lived long enough to get to AZT, long enough to get to protease inhibitors, highly effective medications for the disease. Delays led to more people dying. We should end the suffering of Parkinson's disease, right? You know, it is, as Michael J. Fox says, it sucks.
Yeah.
And
I wouldn't wish it upon anybody.
And the suffering is immense.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have it, but I see it and I get pissed off. When I'm walking the streets of New York and I see people with Parkinson's, I get pissed off because I think that suffering is needless. I think it's preventable. I think it's avoidable. And we need to act with urgency to bring about the end of this largely man-made disease.
Well, I'm glad you touched upon that, because getting into the last kind of phase here of our chat, I want to talk about advocacy, and I want to just give the viewers a brief synopsis of how I met Dr. Dorsey. So because of advocacy, I was invited to the policy forum in Washington, and I wrote a whole speech, and I was supposed to talk to representatives, and I walked in the room, and I always say that even if I didn't have Parkinson's, I would have been shaking from nerves. Not only was there a lot of high lawmakers there, Dr. Dorsey was there, Muhammad Ali's wife was there, and I saw Miss Lani Ali outside the office, and she says, "What are you holding that up for?" She goes, "I'm here to hear you talk." And I said, "This is what I prepared." She goes, "Put it away." She goes, "Speak from your heart." That was the best piece of advice I could have ever gotten. And I walked in that office, and as Dr. Dorsey could probably attest, I just started bawling. I talked about my children. I put my notes down. And when I walked away, I was the talk of Washington. Everybody came out and said that was the most emotional speech you've ever heard. It was touching. And we're walking in the underground tunnels of going to the lunch hall, and I get a tap on my back, and it's this gentleman. And he said, I just want to let you know, honestly, I started crying. He said, what you just did is going to get us to a cure and save lives, because people need to hear your stories. That was one of the most eye-opening things that has ever happened to me since I got diagnosed.
So in Senator Cory Booker's office, Senator Cory Booker's father had Parkinson's disease. You said the second worst day of your life was the day you got diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And the worst day of your life was when you had to tell your 3 sons that you couldn't be Superman for them.
Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to tell their children that their dad is going to be less of a man, providing for them and doing things for them. But I promised them that I would not become a statistic, and that's why I'm here doing interviews with such great men like this. And again, from that, we were sitting there eating lunch, and I got a call to go to meet Senator Cory Booker. And he said, listen, I heard about what happened. He goes, I want to talk to you. And I have since formed a relationship with him. He invited me to his church the week after. I mean, it is amazing what can happen just from you using your voice. And I always say to people, everybody has the right to just suffer in silence if you want to. I don't listen. I know what you go through on a daily basis, but I feel like there's always something that can be done in your comfort level within the realm of what health you're battling. Talk to the people, like, as far as what can be done on a most basic level. I mean, not everybody's going to have a podcast. Not everybody's going to travel to Washington and talk to congressmen and senators. What are some of the most basic things that anybody could do, regardless of how they're feeling?
So first of all, you're not less of a man because of Parkinson's disease. I think you're more of a man because of it. I mean, look at Michael J. Fox. Is he more or less because of the suffering that he's gone through? Is Brian Grant more or less of a person? Is Davis Finney more or less of a person?
I appreciate
Is Larry Gifford more or less of a person? Is Dr. Sonia Mather more or less of a person? Is Tim Hague more or less of a person? Is Alex Signorelli more or less of a person? Is Dr. Sarah Winningham more or less of a person? Dr. Jana Reed more or less of a person? I think those are just people that are under 50 when they were diagnosed. Is people like you who changed the course of the disease. The course of Parkinson's disease, the course of HIV, the course of polio, the courses of drinking and driving, those all rest in the hands of those individuals who are most directly affected by the disease. As you said, some people with Parkinson's, they have the right to suffer in silence, and that's fine.
Which I do on some days, but not every day.
But when people, it's a burden to have the disease, but it's a burden to be the face of the disease. And when people like you step forward, when people like Michael J. Fox step forward, when people like Brian Grant step forward, we should applaud them, we should recognize them, we should thank them.
I appreciate you saying that, Doctor. Listen, I've always said to anybody who will listen, aside from therapeutics or anything else, the one thing that you need with this disease more than anything to keep you going every day is hope. It's hope. You have to hope that there's better therapeutics coming out. You have to have hope of a cure. You have to have hope that you meet a Dr. Dorsey who can give you such wonderful information.
So here's the hope. In the book, we say that by 2035, 9 years from now, that the rise of Parkinson's disease adjusted for age is 0%. That you and me and your sons halt the rise of Parkinson's disease by 2035. That there's a 0% rise, so that by 2036, you're going to come back and we'll start talking about the fall of Parkinson's disease.
Book it now, because it's going to happen.
Diseases come and go. They are not permanent fixtures of society. We have seen the fall of stroke, down 30% in the United States since 1990. We've seen the fall of HIV at its lowest level since 1990. We see the fall of drinking and driving. We see the fall of polio. We've seen the fall of lots and lots of diseases. We are going to bring about the fall of Parkinson's disease. In Europe, where they got rid of a lot of these chemicals, they got rid of the degreasing chemical, they cleaned up their air, they got rid of the most harmful pesticides. The incidence, the number of new cases in Parkinson's disease in the Netherlands is either flat or falling. The number of new cases of Parkinson's disease in England, adjusted for age, is either flat or falling.
Numbers don't lie.
The number of incidents of Parkinson's disease in Germany is falling. If we can bring about the fall of Parkinson's disease in Germany, we can certainly do that in the United States, and we can do that around the world, and people like you are going to make it happen.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Again, it has been such an honor to sit here and talk to you, and to know you. And like I said, when I met you that day, you gave me something that at certain times in your life with this disease can be tough, which is hope. Just speaking to the camera, talk to people that are just diagnosed. If you had to give them a parting message here, what can they hold on to be hopeful for with this disease?
So I think the course of Parkinson's disease is far more modifiable than we let on. And I think there's three ways to modify the course. The first is stop being exposed to these chemicals that are linked to the disease. If you're a smoker and you get diagnosed with lung cancer, the first thing doctors are going to tell you to do is stop smoking. And indeed, if you stop smoking, your prognosis is better than if you continue to smoke.
Correct.
If you have high blood pressure, doctor's going to tell you stop salt intake. If you have type 2 diabetes, you're going to diet and exercise. All those things favorably modify the course of of those diseases. Why wouldn't the course of Parkinson's be favorably modified by stop getting exposed to pesticides, dry cleaning chemicals, and polluted air? And so we give you 25 ways to do that in the book, and lots of other ways we can do that in our communities, get rid of the pesticides on our kids' schools and playgrounds, and we can do that as a country. Second, you got to exercise. You got to sweat. You got to become Jimmy Choi. You got to become Sarah Whittingham. And if you can't do that, you can just walk to the mailbox and back. The more you exercise, the more releases growth factors, which protect the remaining nerve cells. So you want to stop fueling the fire by stopping exposure to these chemicals, and you want to give those remaining nerve cells a fighting chance by exercising and sweating, assuming you can do so. And third, you just need to get really good care. And it's hard to get that care. Michael Bobson and I are working on a book giving you 10 secrets to better care, but better care makes a difference. We know that people who see a Parkinson's specialist who get the expert care that they need get better health outcomes. We need to make that more accessible. There are increasingly ways to do this. Through the internet, the Parkinson's Voice Project offers speech therapy for free, online for thousands of people. Use those things so that your voices are heard and that you speak with an intent, and use that intent to live a better life for you and prevent your kids and grandkids from ever getting this disease.
Well, listen, until that next book comes out, and we're going to be sitting here talking about it again, this needs to be a staple in everyone's home. The Parkinson's Plan, A New Path to Prevention and Treatment, by the great Dr. Ray Dorsey, Dr. Michael Okun. Pick it up today. It should be an encyclopedia for anybody who's suffering from Parkinson's. Thank you so much, Doctor. It was great to see you, sir.
Terrific. Thank you.